They stuffed him. Formation in the Apple Cup takes a knee. The clock will do the rest.
Go Cougs.
Had to throw in the Go Cougs there at the end. Jamey Rogers. Welcome back to another Couch GM podcast. Cougs on the Couch GM podcast. We got a great episode today. WSU Fall Football has officially started yesterday. We're going to have on Cougfan.com's Vinnick to talk through all of his insights so far at Fall Camp and what to expect moving forward. And before we get into it, the sponsor of this podcast, of course, is Cougfan.com. Make sure to check out Cougfan.com, subscribe to their premium membership for all things WSU athletics to stay up to date. And if you didn't already know, myself, I'm a full-time mortgage loan advisor when I'm not on the mic here. So make sure to reach out to me if you have any needs for mortgage financing. If you're looking to buy in Pullman, anywhere on the West Coast, doesn't matter. And Dylan, what do you do outside of the podcast?
Once you guys get that financing settled with Connor, get a hold of me in terms of looking for some additional solar panels to go on top of that roof for that new home.
And as a reminder, make sure to go join the 1890 Club, support the Cougar Collective, help keep the players on campus here in Pullman. And I guess, Jackson, do you have any plugs, or where can they find you on socials?
Yeah, you can cue the NFL on Fox music. I will be working with that crew this upcoming season. Very big news for me. I know that's kind of outside of the pantheon of what happens in our podcast, but that's a big news for me. But no, nothing else to plug. Socials right below me. You can find me there, talking Cougs. So yeah, let's get into it, guys. It's fall camp. We're fired up. Let's go.
Yeah. Fall camp started yesterday. There's 2 sessions, 2 practices. We're going to get into some insights with Jamey Vinnick here in about 15 minutes, but it sounds like Jamey Rogers is breaking up into 2 camps. So the quarterbacks can each have more of a direct role in leading each practice so that they can see who the top dogs are going to be, who's taking that leadership role, and then eventually they'll combine them. So yeah, excited to hear from Jamey.
Yeah, I'm excited to ask Jamey about that. Is this like we're splitting 1s and 2s off and then 3s and 4s? Is it what? Well, I know they're not saying that, but like, is that?
And guys will move between.
Okay.
Well, what Rogers said in his presser yesterday, that is a way to split up the 4 quarterbacks to simply be with what they think is going to be their starting O-line. That's what I took from Jamey Rogers' press conference yesterday.
And as we get into the show, I feel, fall camp is so much of a time of like, what is smoke? What is not? Your coach, everyone's coach is just towing company line, spewing propaganda for their team as they should. And it is our job to parse through this stuff and say what is real, what is not. So again, that's why I'm just super excited to have Jamey on and ask him, those kinds of questions. Like, because does it mean anything that camp is opening up with Zevi and Duggar in the same group with Shepard and Potter, working together? I don't know, but it's worthy of asking.
I believe it was Zevi and Johnny together.
Oh, was it?
Duggar and Potter.
No,
yeah,
it was Zevi and Duggar.
And
was it? That's what I saw. That's what I thought I saw.
Okay.
Or maybe that's today, and they've already changed it up. I have no idea, but that's why we have Jamey on. We'll get asked.
Well, one thing we do have is thank you to WSU audio man Jared Embry. We've got some plugs from Coach Rogers' first press conference in fall camp as a Washington State football head coach. Here's his day 1 thoughts.
Would you dislike on day 1 from the 2 sessions?
Yeah, I think, every start of every season, the first day is always kind of the first day. Guys have anxiety, guys have the jitters of just being out here. And then in the afternoon practice, obviously you deal with some of the heat, but there's no excuse. We've been running through a lot of these things in player-led practices, and the guys should have a good grasp of what they're doing, especially on these first couple days. So I would say the urgency and the effort in Group 1 was probably better. Overall, kind of proud of the offense's ability to respond with maybe slightly less numbers in the second practice. So it will come together, and there's going to be some rotation inside of these practices from guys jumping from one to the next.
What I will say is it's fall camp for everybody, coaches and media. What is with the temperature questions from the media every single year? I mean, to me, it is one of the laziest questions I think you can ask a football team in fall camp.
It's the dead of summer in Pullman, Washington.
It's the dead of summer everywhere in fall camp.
Right.
Okay, everybody's dealing with this across the country.
It got up to 91 for the record, so it's nothing crazy. It's like, you're probably not going to see that during actual games, but still, what if you go down to Texas? You might see that.
I think you said it best. We're all working to get into midseason form. We're it's a progression. We're building up.
Joke. I'm just giving the TV crews some shit.
Yeah. No, that's kind of classic stuff.
But kind of going into that, I like how he explained, hey, there's going to be first practice jitters, this and that. There's 74 new players on this football team. Obviously Rodgers and company want to get this ship moving. But like you said, there's going to be first week jitters, first practice jitters. He said in his press conference, there's some mistakes that, we're not going to really care or criticize about in day one, but I'm excited to see what week 2 and week 3, what his sentiment sounds like.
Yeah. Well, and it's also like you have 74 new players, but like it's kind of merging two teams really, because you have this whole South Dakota State cohort coming who is more familiar with the coaching staff than the returning players. So it's kind of like this merging of two groups. And then obviously you have all the other, incoming freshmen and incoming transfers. So really like 3 groups of like the people who are brand spanking new to both coaches and the school. You have guys who are new to the coaches. You have guys that are new to the school. Like there's a lot of different factions that you're trying to bring and gel as one unit. So, from that standpoint, I hear what coach is saying.
And like they've said, they have had player-led practices leading up to this point. So they have been starting to mesh together and get this stuff going. But now it's the official, all coaches are on board. And kind of talking through the practice setup, there's practices at 9 a.m. and 2:30, and they're each an hour and a half long. And the thought is that if you have less guys in 2 practices, then they get more reps on less time on the field. So the efficiency.
Yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, it's like, obviously you're getting more reps for more guys, but you're also having guys in separate practices that, this is time where you could, have guys working together on the field, but now they're sort of separated. And I think it is sort of the cost benefit analysis of reps versus sort of team cohesion and trying to navigate that. But yeah, I think for me, I'm so curious to talk with Jamey about the quarterbacks. And I know we all are, but I think before we even get Jamey on, because I know he's busy right now and will be joining us shortly. Back in May, when we had talked about quarterbacks, this was not a concern for you guys of the group of quarterbacks. And I think before we get Jamey on, we should do a little bit of a temperature check about where we're at. Do we still feel the same way as we did in May? I know not a lot has changed, but are you guys still firmly, this is not a concern for WSU with the quarterbacks?
Like I said before, I think one of these guys will rise to the top. I mean, Zebby, we saw what he could do briefly in the bowl game. Johnny, we've seen just flashes, potential of what he could be. Duggar, we don't know anything about him aside from the fact that he's like a track star and he's super fast. Jackson Potter still has the opportunity there. I feel like there's so much talent that is right there, and they're all going to be competing. Someone will rise to the top. It's not the same role as in the past to where you need a great quarterback to throw the ball. Now it's more balanced. Game manager. Right. You could potentially have Zebby and also a Johnny or Duggar both on the field at the same time doing different packages to utilize their different strengths. That I'm just not worried about that position right now with the diversity of talent that is there.
Sure. Dylan?
Yeah, I feel the same way. We're only a day in the fall camp. We've seen a few videos of quarterbacks throwing. I want this to kind of get into week 2, week 3. And once they start getting into more of 7-on-7s and more scrimmage aspect is when we're going to start getting some better detail on what the race is looking like. And I'm sure Jamey, will clue us in, but I know we do have a snippet of Coach Rogers talking about the quarterback play. And to me, it sounded just like Mike Leach back in the day.
Well, there's 74 different new players on this team. I think
it's.
What'd you make?
Oh,
I think it might be the other one.
What'd you make of the quarterback play today?
It was solid. You guys are going to ask me the same question every day, and I'm not going to give you an answer really on any of it until we continue to move through spring ball. But overall, guys leading maybe groups that they didn't run with in the summer is important, and then being able to win the whole team over. So Johnny and Jackson ran with this group today. And then earlier it was Zevi and Julian in that first practice. So we'll continue to mix it up to make sure that every quarterback is running with the potential 1-0 line, more experienced group, so it's an even split.
A lot of
guys right on the split.
Explaining an even split with that first team O line.
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to what you said, Connor, like someone will rise to the top. There's no question someone will rise to the top. But is that whoever that is it going to be enough?
We don't know. We don't know the potential of these guys. It's like
we don't.
Unless we bring in a guy that already performed at another university. I guess, are you worried about the position? And like, what are your thoughts?
I am worried about the position because we have, as you just said, no experience. There's no one in this quarterback room that has any experience playing the position at this level. And if you say Zevi's bowl game, I will get
or
violent.
Dugars.
Look at Zevi at Bryant. I mean, it's not the same level, obviously, but he's got the talent.
That does not carry a lot of weight for me. What someone has done.
No weight at all. Throwing for what he did on a Syracuse defense with one of the top, I think, in my opinion, up and coming coaches in college football. I think if Syracuse has a double-digit win this year, you're going to see that guy go to the SEC.
Perhaps, maybe, but like in this day and age, a bowl game that is not a New Year's Six bowl is an exhibition game. And I mean, it kind of was before that too. Like, it just does not mean the same as what it once did. And I'm not going to judge one performance in an exhibition game and say, oh, this guy, he did show flashes, and that's great. I'm sure there will be games that he does show that same flash, and we're like, oh, there's the Zevi that we thought that's possible. But I'm just worried about the valleys. I'm conscious that there will be peaks. I know that, but it's the valleys that I'm concerned about and how low that could possibly get, and that's why I'm concerned. But
were you concerned last year heading into it with the quarterback?
I was a little
John
bit,
Mateer
but
no
and I was concerned about John Mateer as a thrower, but I knew what he could do with his legs. We'd seen that, and we'd seen that kind of talent. And yes, John Mateer did catch a lot of people by surprise. You could argue he caught the nation by surprise. So we had talked about this, a couple months ago. Is it possible that, a Julian Duggar or a Johnny Shepard or Zevi Eckhouse steps up and just completely blows expectations out of the water? That certainly could happen. It happened the year before and the year before that. But again, are we getting too comfortable in the assumption that this is just going to continue to happen? And that's where I think the root of where my concern is at is that I'm not, my boots are not on the ground. I'm not watching these guys. But the assumption that this is just going to continue to happen, that some quarterback is just going to emerge and quell all concerns, you can't expect that every single year. And at some point, people are going to come down to earth.
I guess, like, what is the alternative? Because I feel like that's just college football. You know, it's like you have to give guys opportunity. They're not going to transfer from a bigger university with experience to Washington State. You know, it's like you never know what you're going to get until they get out there.
Oregon State would beg to differ. Oregon State would beg to differ. They just got Malik Murphy.
For sure.
Know? Like,
can WSU pull a guy like that and spend
WSU cannot do that. That's why that is why I'm concerned because WSU can't do that. And now we're stuck, or stuck is a harsh term, but we are left with quarterbacks who have no experience because we cannot pay top dollar to go get a quarterback with experience. And now we are left to sort of wait and see. And waiting and see can be fruitful. It also cannot. Things can go wrong. And I just think in our sort of WSU echo chamber, we're always going to be optimistic that it is going to work out. But I do think it's important for someone to be asking, what if it doesn't work out? What if is this not going to be just a repeat of the last couple of years? That's possible. And I just feel like with everything's going at, my inclination is to say that this is not going to be another repeat with the quarterback position. And that, call me pessimistic, but you know, it's just where my head's at.
Glass half full or half empty?
Yeah. He's live here with us. Let's bring Jamey on to the round table.
We're going to bring on Jamey Vinnick here of Cougfan. There we go. Jamey, how's it going?
It's going great, guys. How we doing?
Good. How are things in Pullman?
Hot.
Is it hot? We heard about that.
Yeah.
We're looking
easy
at
for us
for the afternoon practice later.
Easy for us in our AC to complain about the weather, but when you're actually got the boots on the ground, it's a whole lot different.
Yeah, I would say so. It's the morning isn't too bad. It's usually high 70s, but at least yesterday it was getting about the mid 90s, and then it'll be like that again here in a couple hours.
So,
well, Jamey,
walk us. Yeah, if you want to walk us through just your initial thoughts of, obviously fall camp opened yesterday. There's not a ton to take away from that, but initial thoughts of the eye test day one and what you saw this year.
Yeah, you know, I think again we're sort of 3 practice sessions in, each one being about an hour. It's in some ways tough to glean a whole lot just because the team has been split up. You're not getting the whole team together at once. You're not getting all 100 guys and really getting a feel for the depth chart and so on. But I think that being said, you're able to kind of get more of an individual look at certain guys. And I think the way that it certainly seems to be shaping up is that it truly is going to be a 4-horse race to be the quarterback. And that's between Zevi Eckhouse, Jackson Potter, Johnny Shepard, and Julian Duggar. I mean, just from what I've seen through 3 practices, they're getting their opportunities. I mean, this is one where maybe in the back of his mind, Rogers has a guy that he likes and is leaning towards, but it certainly hasn't shown up on the field in terms of these guys are splitting their reps. They had Eckhouse and Duggar in the morning session yesterday. They switched that to Potter and Shepard today because that's where most of the number 1 offensive line is. So they're working on a whole lot of different things, I think, to try and pick who is going to be the best quarterback for this team. And, they're willing to do a handful of different things and, give guys the reps needed to actually make this competition.
Any sort of first impressions of the 2 new quarterbacks, Ajani and Julian? I mean, obviously we've sort of known the scouting report, loose scouting report, athletic, run first kind of guys. Has that changed in 2 days now, 2 or 3 days, or anything that sort of steps outside of that sort of very basic scouting report on the 2?
Yeah, I think the first thing that maybe isn't widely known yet is Duggar's a lefty, which obviously is a difference in terms of, you're used to right-handed quarterbacks and so on, but he's a lefty, and haven't seen him for day 2 of practice yet. He'll go out here in a couple hours, but he was excellent yesterday. He was really crisp and made some really nice throws. Wasn't maybe stretching the field on vertical routes all that much, but was good in the intermediate, good in the short routes. He looked really sharp. Shepard has been a little up and down throwing the ball, but he made the best throw of camp so far today. A bootlegging outright, scrambling, and just launching a ball into the end zone to a wide open, I think it was Caden Harkin, walk-on receiver. So you see some of the mobility that both of them have, and you see some of what made them power four quarterbacks, or recruited to be power four quarterbacks, just in terms of some of the athleticism and some of the throws that they've shown they can make.
Mm-hmm.
That was something Ajani said to us too, is that he really thinks he throws the ball very well on the run. In terms of when you're looking at those types of aspects, do you think certain types of, I guess, is that an advantage for an Ajani Shepherd in this style of an offense that, he might be the best guy throwing the ball on the run?
I think it definitely could be. I think you could make that argument that that might be something where when they're evaluating the quarterbacks, all right, Shepherd has the mobility and has the ability to make that throw on the run. I mean, this was an off-balance throw, and obviously the field is only a half field, so it's hard to get exact numbers, but it was probably 40, 45 yards in the air, and right where he wanted it to go. So he has shown the ability, again, even just for the 2 sessions, of having a little bit of that mobility and ability to make plays on the move. I think the key for him is going to be, the accuracy when his feet are set, when he's delivering out of or inside the pocket. There's a couple throws he missed. It wasn't a great first practice for the offense today. It wasn't a good morning practice. There was some bad snaps. There were some missed throws. There was an interception. It wasn't particularly crisp, but you saw some of the flashes from what Shepherd can do. It's just going to be a matter of, if he is to win the job, it's going to have to be consistent with every throw, not just the throws on the run.
Touching on that, Jamey, I would like you to at least attempt to reel me back in, because a conversation we've been having for several months on this podcast has been whether we are sort of pessimistic or optimistic about this new quarterback group. And unfortunately, I have been a little bit more in the glass half empty group instead of the glass half full group. And part of that is what you have been talking about. And my just read on it is that Ajani and Julian feel like high upside, like the peaks could be very high. However, the valleys could be quite low. And Zevi, to me, feels more like a high floor guy, but I don't necessarily know where the ceiling is. And the combination of all of it feels like there's not a lot of consistency with this group. Where are you at in looking at these quarterbacks? And do you feel like we have sort of a repeat of the last couple of years where we have a quarterback that just sort of emerges and just catches everyone by surprise? Or does this feel different to you, that we're not going to have that same repeat of the last couple of years?
I think it's funny you say that with Zevi and the ceiling versus or with the high floor versus Duggar and Shepherd, maybe with the higher ceiling. That was the exact thing I said last year when in the Eckhouse Mateer battles. I thought if you were shooting for the baseline 6 wins, I thought Zevi had a better chance to get you there. But I also thought John had a better chance to win 9 or 10, which, as we know, very well could have happened if not for a few defensive issues here and there. I do think there is some of the same this year, though. As you said, I think you feel safe with Zevi as your quarterback. You feel like he's going to get you probably that 6-win mark to get to a bowl, maybe get you a 7th, but getting to 9 or 10 maybe isn't going to be in the cards. On the flip side, I think you feel like if you go Duggar or Shepherd, yeah, there's that unknown, there's that wild card. Maybe one of these guys who hasn't really gotten a full shot becomes, what Mateer was, or becomes just an absolute star and can get you to 9 or 10 games. But the unknown also leaves the possibility of winning 3 or 4. So I think, and I will also say within that, I don't think they're on the same plane as Mateer was last year. I think Mateer had been in the system. He knew Ben Arbuckle. He knew the system he wanted to run. We had seen a little bit of some flash from him at Washington State. But I do think that there is going to be that argument of, do you believe that your ceiling is as high with Eckhouse as it is with Shepherd and Duggar, but also understanding that the floor is a lot different? And I think ultimately that's I think part of what the decision is going to come down to is who runs the offense the best, and who is the risk of one of the younger guys that's maybe a little more unknown worth the reward. Whereas, are you okay playing it safe for a year, getting your feet wet? Because then if that's the case, which I think there is an argument that isn't the worst idea in the world, I think Zevi is the most reliable guy in this group.
Right. And I think that's something that's a really interesting question about how conservative or risky Coach Rodgers would be in his first year. And you know, a 6-win season does not sound that appealing to most fans, but for a head coach to get 6 wins in a bowl game, he is liking the sound of that. And you know, you just that question of like, do I really go all in year one, or do I try and be a little bit more conservative? I don't know, because I have been saying, and I'm probably wrong about this, but I kind of thought that this was sort of a phantom quarterback battle, that like we're going to give Julian and Ajani their shots, but really in the back of our head, Zevi is the guy that we know, we feel like can be the more consistent quarterback. And like, you know, I think at one point we tried to do some odds on who the quarterback would be and just sort of like try and gauge sort of how far or likely the chances are of someone. And I had Zevi as the odds on favorite, but it sounds like after last year, you're firmly placed in the wait to see, like not a glass half full, glass half empty. You're kind of just firmly, we need to wait and see on this.
Yeah, and I agreed. I thought, at the end of spring ball, Rodgers said something along the lines of, the quarterback competition's still open. We haven't given the job to anyone. And I think everyone was just like, yeah, okay, sure. Like,
right.
Like, it was the same thing that Dicker said when Cam Ward was the quarterback. Like, he's got to win the job. Like, okay, sure he does. But we know he's the quarterback. But
right.
I think when they brought in Shepard, because he was first, it's like, okay, maybe a little competition. Then they bring in Duggar, and it's like, okay, they maybe really do want to make this a true competition. And then you hear Rodgers say on Tuesday that the reason they're splitting up practices is to give the quarterbacks as many reps as possible. And then you watch the first 3 practices now, and it's been those 4 quarterbacks are essentially splitting reps. And it's like, okay, this really is an open competition. And and he said, obviously, Tuesday said, every position's still open. And obviously that's one of the things you have to say as a coach. But, Brock Dew is going to be the center. Christian Hilborn's going to be the right tackle. You're pretty confident Tucker Large is going to be one of the safeties. But I do think that what you are seeing, at least through 3 days, and maybe when the team all gets together on Saturday, one guy is pretty clearly the number one. But at least through what I have seen through 3 practices, it does seem to be a very real quarterback competition. And not just a coach saying things because it's the right thing to say, as in akin to maybe, again, what Dicker did when he would say that about a Ward quarterback battle when you knew Cam Ward was going to be QB1.
Right. And Jamey, can you talk through the differences in offenses from the prior scheme to now what you've seen so far in the field? And maybe is there a certain type of quarterback that makes the most sense in the system? Like Mark Gronowski at South Dakota was the guy who was more of a mobile dual threat guy. And then also, is there the potential for using multiple quarterbacks on the field at the same time with the different skill sets that they have?
Yeah, I mean, I think to answer that last question, I do think there's a good chance that they do that. I think especially if Zevi wins the job, I think there's a very real, or Jackson Potter for that matter, there's a real chance they would use Shepard or Duggar in kind of the John Mateer 2023 role, where he comes in for some wildcat, some gadget plays. You use the speed and the athleticism that the other 2 guys have. I think there is a world where that happens. I think the thing that I will say just from my own opinion where I maybe give Zevi the edge is I think a lot of what this offense is predicated around is being able to manage the game. You're going to get the ball to the skilled players. That is the goal, and obviously that's the goal of every offense. But I look at last year where the goal was John Mateer has the ball in his hands. He's the one who's going to make the plays. This offense is going to be a little bit more about get it to your receivers, get it to your running backs. The offense I always point to when I talk about this is the 49ers. And, Brock Purdy's a game manager. Well, it's easy when you've got McCaffrey and Ayuk and Kittle and Deebo Samuel and Jawan Jennings. I think if that's what they are really trying to do, I think Eckhouse is going to be the best fit for that, just in terms of he's got the experience, he's got the leadership, he's got the composure to really manage a game and go out there, get the ball to Angel Johnson, get the ball to Devin Ellison, get the ball to Josh Meredith. So if that's what they're looking for, I think Eckhouse he presents it, at least to me, as the front runner in that way. But if they are looking for someone to be more of a, again, dynamic playmaker, I think that's where the questions come in of, okay, do we trade off maybe some of that veteran leadership and some of that experience to get a guy who can maybe do a few more things with his legs the way Duggar and Shepard can?
And Jamey, you know, we could sit here and talk about quarterbacks all day. The one thing I wanted to just table off was, if you do have a multiple quarterback package, you've got two guys that are very dynamic that throw the ball, one left-handed, one right-handed. That could surprise some teams, you know, later into the game. But I wanted to get to the offensive line. Taking a look at your most recent article, you did a projected 2 deep. And out of the 11 offensive linemen, 7 are returning Cougs. You know, how big was it for Rodgers and the staff to return Dunham and Thorpe and Lester and Tripp, some of those guys that are going to be depth pieces? And I guess, you know, also throwing Kyle Martin into that. Who are some of those maybe second tier guys that you think could battle into, getting a spot on that offensive line?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it was massive to bring those guys back, to not be really, I mean, you lost a little bit on the offensive line, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, you brought back 2 of your best 3 offensive linemen from last year. Pole being the third, obviously was out of eligibility, went to the NFL, but I would have said this in October, November as well. This is not just saying this because these are the guys who stayed versus the guys who didn't. Your best 3 linemen last year were Pole, Dew, and Hilborn. And I think, you know, obviously people talked a lot about the upside of Falili Fa'amawe, but if you look at on-field performance, those were your best 3. So to keep 2 of those guys was massive. It was huge. And then to keep, again, the Dunhams, who you've seen him really perform well in practices, and he's going to have the opportunity to win one of those jobs. Johnny Lester, who was a former walk-on, who has worked his tail off to get to this spot. And then, you know, you get into the Xavier Thorpes and the Chris Linos, and Kyle Martin, and you see the promise of, okay, if something were to happen to one of the top guys, you feel confident about the depth. And that hasn't always been the case in the last few years. And then on top of it, you add Jalen Caldwell, you add AJ Vaipulu, you add Sone Falialo, and suddenly it's like, okay, there's some serious depth at this position. Nick Bakken as well from South Dakota State, where, you know, I think Dew and Hilborn, you're pretty confident in saying they're going to be the starters there. But I do think there's going to be competition at the other 3 spots. I mean, I think, you know, you feel fairly confident in saying that Caldwell and Vaipulu are in good spots. But, you know, Ashton Tripp is going to have his opportunity to win that left tackle job. You know, Vaipulu is going to be competing with Dunham, going to be competing with Lester, kind of trying to find who the best 2 guards are. Bakken in there as well. So there is a lot of position battles that are kind of going on within the offensive line. But I think ultimately it gives you, there's a lot of depth there that maybe you haven't had in years past.
Yeah.
And one last question. Sorry. I apologize.
No.
How concerned are you with Christian Hilborn and blocking for the run game? Because that's something that he said over the years that he knows he hasn't been the best at.
I'm not, and I think part of it's because he's at tackle. I think a lot of his struggles run blocking maybe were at guard, and that was obviously more of a priority on the interior. And then I think also the way they've worked at it. I mean, he wasn't asked to run block that often the last few years because they didn't do it all that often. No matter what Jake Dickert said he wanted to do, they did not run the ball that much. So I think he understands. I think he's upped his physicality. I think he knows now that this has to be a big part of what his identity is, and that he's going to have to block in order to allow his running backs to get to the edge or fill that gap between right tackle and right guard.
While we're on the subject of offensive line, I did want to ask you if you'd had the opportunity to check out much or at least watch Jalen Caldwell that much at all, because when he came in, and this is so common with offensive lineman transfers, where you haven't watched any film on this guy and all you see is 6'7", 310, and your eyes just light up. And it's like, okay, but how does this guy move? Like, does he actually have the athleticism that is required for that position? And what's your read on him? Because we know he's massive, but does he move well?
Through one practice, he'll be in the afternoon session again. Yes. Mm-hmm. And what stood out to me as I'm watching him, again, he is massive. His lower legs, like his calves, are very thin, which is not common for an offensive line. It's a bit of a weird, and maybe I had a weird angle, but it looked like he was thin in his calf area. but I think that allows him to have a little more mobility and be a little more nimble. I mean, just kind of watching his footwork, it was very crisp. It was very clean. It wasn't, he didn't look like he was 6'7", 320. Don't get me wrong. He is a big dude, and he looks every bit of being big, but he doesn't move in that way. I think there's a little bit of added quickness that maybe you don't expect from a guy that size. And I do wonder how much of that is because, again, just from what my view was, his calves were very skinny, which was, I thought, just a little bit interesting for a guy that big. Calves. But but I think it maybe allows him to move around a little bit and allows his footwork to be pretty crisp.
Sure. Okay. And
now,
Connor, sorry.
Oh, kind of transitioning from offensive line, I was going to say that Jamey Rogers pointed out Josh Meredith as being a standout and that he's noticeably faster. I'm curious from the eye test. You saw him last year. You saw him this camp. Is Josh Meredith actually faster? And then off of that, what do you see from Devin Ellison, some of the other wide receivers?
Yeah, I can't say yes or no yet on Meredith. I mean, I certainly don't doubt Rogers. It's just there hasn't been enough evidence to really see whether or not he can burn, not to mention, he catches a crossing route or something, the play's blown dead, before he really can get going. But I mean, he looks good. He had a couple catches earlier today. He had a couple catches yesterday. Ellison made a couple of really nice catches yesterday. I think he was a little, it was hot today. He may have been cramping a little bit or something, but he obviously, you see the potential, you see the size, you see the physicality. I thought Jeremiah Noga looked really good in the second session yesterday. Again, we'll see him here in a little bit again. Some of the youngsters, a guy like Noah Westbrook, he had 3 grabs yesterday in the second session. Looked good. Leighton Smithson had a nice catch. So there's been a few guys who have made some good plays, and they haven't really, again, done anything full speed yet. There's no pad, so it's hard to get a full gauge on how some of these guys are looking. But Brandon Ganashamorthy also had a couple grabs yesterday. So you've seen some good plays, nothing outrageous yet, I wouldn't say, but some good, solid, reliable pass catching.
Yeah. Touching off that one, I know part of what I found to be tremendously difficult about your job in fall camp is parsing through what is smoke and then what is real, because obviously fall camp vibes are high, bullets are not flying, but the second the season starts and the bullets start to fly, things start to look different. Have you noticed anything either way, whether something that people are saying is like, that sounds like smoke, or that sounds like the real deal? I know it's, yeah. Sorry, I know it's new, so it's tough to really make firm observations, but anything that stood out to you?
I will say this. On Tuesday, Rogers talked a lot about, he mentioned Sullivan Schlimgen as a guy who could maybe get on the field early. He's mentioned Trillian Sorrell and Tyrone Cotton in the past. All 3 of those guys have made plays in the first couple practices. Now, will that turn into them, making plays in September, October? Who knows? But just in the way Rogers is, he isn't a big smoke blower. I mean, that was, I think, one thing that people tired on with Dickert is he would talk about, player X, Y, and Z about how great they're going to be, and then they'd play 15 snaps all season, or they'd never see the field. And, so Rogers just isn't going to do that. He's he'll compliment guys, he'll praise guys, but he's not going to sit there and talk about, this freshman, he's going to be a big impact player for us. He's talked about how, this guy might have an opportunity to get on the field. He keeps it very kind of tame in the way he says that. But I do find it interesting that the 3 freshmen that he really mentioned, again, were those 3, Schlimgen, Cotton, Sorrell. Those are kind of the 3 guys he's mentioned, both now and then back in signing day. And Sorrell in particular had a couple of plays yesterday. Actually, Demarius Russell had a couple of really nice plays this morning. Not that he hasn't necessarily been mentioned yet. And then the other one I'll say is on Tuesday, we were talking about the safety position in the press conference, and he mentions Kyle Peterson as a guy who will be a really good player for them one day. Kyle Peterson goes out and has an interception like 20 minutes into the first practice. So it seems like every guy that he has mentioned that maybe isn't on the radar so far has made a play. But I think he's also not over-promising the way that I think, again, people grew frustrated that Dickert might do about how great, this guy is going to be and then doesn't do anything. That's just not in Rogers' nature to be that, again, rah, over the top, crazy enthusiasm. He's just going to call it like he sees
no
it.
BS.
the guys that he's praised have looked good so far.
Now, moving to the defensive side of the ball, talking linebackers, there's a couple of returning Cougs and Parker McKenna, Keith Brown. There's also various South Dakota guys, Caleb Francel and others. What are you seeing from the defense so far, the linebackers specifically, and working off of that?
Yeah, I think, again, every position there's going to be a battle. That's what they're going to say. I would say with some confidence, you're going to see Francel at Sam for most of the season. You'll see McKenna at Will. I think the one spot that might still be up in the air is Mike, and I think that's Keith Brown, that's Anthony Polano. During the spring, they went back and forth pretty much all spring battling. Are they still going to be? Again, won't know until Saturday when they're practicing together. Brown's looked really good. Polano made a couple plays yesterday, so I think that's the one battle that might still be kind of on the horizon. But just within that, again, you're looking at a Saturday until you really know anything.
And then, cornerback play. Obviously, we know a lot of safeties came in. Cale Reeder, Tucker Large, we understand that. But cornerback play was an issue last season. You return Jamari Colson. You bring in a guy, Colby Humphrey, who has a lot of pedigree and a lot of people like. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Colby. And then as well as you bring in a SMU transfer, AJ Davis, and a Cal Poly transfer, Kai Rapola. What do you see from the cornerback group? And does Colson, is he kind of running away with one of the jobs?
You guys got me?
Yep.
Yeah, I got out there for a minute. With Humphrey, you see experience. You see consistency. You see a guy who's been there before and is more than capable of handling some of the tough matchups. And I think, he does a very good job of being physical without grabbing. And I think that's the way they do the one-on-ones now with the receivers versus the corners. They put boxing gloves on the corners. So you can't hold, you can't grab. And he's still finding a way to disrupt the play by being really physical, by getting into a guy's grill, but obviously can't hold, can't grab. Davis had a pick. It probably would have been a pick 6 yesterday. Granted, it was basically fell into his lap off the hands of Leon Neal Jr. That's actually something Rogers said afterwards. But I think he's a guy that has some good upside. I think you're going to see some explosive speeds and athleticism from him. Rapola was banged up most of spring ball. Made a couple plays today, got beat a couple times in some of the one-on-ones and even in the team period. But I think you have depth there. You've got guys with experience, and I think that's so critical. And then especially, again, you get into some of the young guys. Kenny Worthy was really good in the spring. And then, even looking at the guys I mentioned earlier, Cotton and Sorrell, who have looked really good so far.
Okay, well, so it sounds like this might be a lot of the position groups, but I was curious, when you were drafting up your 2 deep, what were the position groups that really took some time and were like, oh man, I don't necessarily know, but what if you could choose one, the position group that you probably had to sit on the longest of, who's going to win out in this 2 deep, what would that position group be?
Defensive end and tight end. I'll go one on each side of the ball.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of bodies. I think they added a lot at defensive end just in the fall or in the spring portal. I think at tight end there were so many injuries, and they've added guys since the spring that I think you're going to see a lot of guys play. I just don't know if there's a true number one 60 snap, 70 snap a game guy. I think it's going to be a lot more rotation, but I really did have to sit on those for a while and say, okay, who do I really think is going to be the number one guy based on what I've seen and based on the new guys they brought in.
And then, last one for me, we've had you on for 30 minutes. Jamey, thank you so much for joining with us. But the one spot that wasn't in your 2 deep was kicker and punter. Is there an actual race for either job? What do you see in terms of the kicking game?
I think Jack Stevens will most likely be the kicker. Ryan Harris was the favorite at punter coming out of the spring. They did add Troy Petz, a transfer from UW. I think they could very well compete. Again, as you guys, I'm sure, know, there isn't a lot of visibility on the special teams during practice just because they're often doing work on the side or they're in the stadium. But I think Stevens will most likely be the kicker, and I think you'll see one of Harris or Petz end up doing the punting, with Harris probably handling kickoffs as well.
And then last one, who have you seen in terms of the return game? Have you seen anything in terms of returners so far?
Not so much for kick return. I think punt return, you're probably going to see one of Tucker Large, Angel Johnson, Tony Freeman. Kick return, I do think Leighton Smithson will probably be involved in that. He's done it before. He's been very good at doing so before. So, but we haven't seen much in terms of kickoff return and what that might look like.
I have one more.
And Angel Johnson, does he look healthy?
Yeah, he looks good. Looks totally healthy.
I have one more. Your initial thoughts on Angel Johnson padded up?
It's always tough to stay with running backs because the plays aren't really full speed. You're not going to see him, necessarily break every tackle because guys aren't really tackling. But he had a run earlier where he goes off the right side, and you see the quickness, you see the athleticism, you see some of the acceleration that he has, and you're like, okay, this guy can really be the difference maker. He's looked really natural catching the ball out of the backfield. I think, again, we're talking 2 practices, but he's looked very good so far.
Okay, fourth last question. One more from me.
Yeah.
Is there anyone that you have observed in practice that looks to be a leader or more of a vocal leadership role on this team that did not expect that person would have sort of a vocal presence on the field like that?
I will say today when they broke down before practice, it was Brock Dew who was in the middle and yelling, and that's just not Brock. That hasn't been his personality. He's been a leader, but he's been more kind of the lead by example, the quiet leader, whereas Hilborn's been the big personality, the vocal leader, Kalani last year. But I was interested in noticing that Brock was the guy that was really using his voice, and I think part of that is you're the center now. That is your job. And then Bobby Terrell, it wasn't so much a surprise yesterday just because, but it was a surprise in the spring as he kind of emerged as one of the leaders. So it was a surprise then, and not a surprise yesterday, but it was a surprise at the start of spring when he was kind of one of the vocal guys, even as he was kind of banged up.
Awesome. Well, Jamey, really appreciate your time as always. We'll have to have you on again sometime soon, closer to the season. And best of luck out there, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Jamey.
Guys, anytime.
Thank you, Jamey.
There we have it. That's Jamey Vinnick from Cougfan.com. Make sure to check out Cougfan.com, subscribe to their premium membership. All things Cougar Athletics. You'll see Jamey's articles throughout the season. He's got some of the best stuff out there when it comes to WSU athletics. Initial takeaways.
I think my initial takeaways are I am more willing to believe that this is a legitimate quarterback battle just on account of the fact that they are breaking up the practice in the sake of getting more reps for people while surrendering the full team being together. So I'm willing to meet him halfway there. I meet you guys halfway there. But that was sort of my big takeaway from it.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how long this split continues to go on.
That
for
too,
the quarterbacks.
That too,
Is it a 1 week thing? So
I think it sounds like on Saturday they bring the full unit together and then it's back. And
then next week
probably
it's full pass.
Probably could have asked a little bit more about that, but yeah. I think I don't know. I think I'm still on. I'm not buying that Jimmy Rogers is a no BS, no smoke kind of guy. I think every coach has his smoke to blow. I think that is a football thing. So I'm not willing to meet him there yet. But I am willing to hear him out that, the guys he's talking about is not, there's nothing going on in the background of I need this guy to step up. He is sort of approaching this as this guy has looked good. I'm going to mention his name, I think that sort of checks out for me. But as far as he's a no BS guy, come on, he's a football coach. He's been doing it his entire life.
Yeah, I think one takeaway I'll take from is I believe what Jamey says wholeheartedly. The amount of depth that we do have on the offensive line, and when we saw just how many people entered the portal after Coach Dickert left, he took 2 or 3. He took Kalani, Falili, and a couple other offensive linemen to Wake Forest with him, and you're going, oh boy, because what the scheme is under Coach Rogers, and you need behemoths on both sides of that trench line. And I thought they did a fantastic job through the portal with some of the guys that they got. And then obviously Jamey, he thinks that Hilborn and Brock Dew were 2 of the best offensive linemen last year. So I feel good about that. That makes me feel a little bit better about whoever we're putting behind center as well, that you have a stable O-line in year 1 of Coach Rogers' tenure.
And I guess my follow-up to the whole quarterback thing is that I'm more concerned about the defense being good, because last year we saw how bad it was. It was one of the worst in the country. John Mateer had to be a Heisman contender in order for us to win games, basically. And so it's like, I'm hoping that the defense turns out to be what it can, and that these South Dakota State transfers, Caleb Francil, Tucker Large, all of them actually can play at this level and at a so that's kind of my initial thought.
A lot of
practice.
Yes, he did practice. A lot of, on the defensive side, a lot of like questions of FCS guys coming to FBS level and whether that will work out. And as far as the offensive line goes, I think what we heard was very promising. But that, again, as you know, Jamey mentioned, similar to the running back position, where it's like tough to get a good read until the bullets are actually starting to fly. I think it's great that we're seeing a lot of pieces that Jamey likes. And it does feel that the coaching staff has like a very good idea, or a very specific idea of the kinds of offensive linemen they're going for, which is great. However, again, we're probably not going to know until those first few weeks of like whether the guys they went out and got are actually, actually that guy.
And to answer this comment, Dakota, that was money from the casino up north. That money was only going to be put into our NIL effort if John Mateer was retained. But it is a good thing going forward. And Connor Jackson, help me out with the name of the casino up there.
Northern Quest, I believe.
Northern Quest. The
Yes,
fact that there's already a relationship with our NIL and Northern Quest, because Northern Quest started off with, pretty much every big time Gonzaga basketball player, Drew Timme, whatever you want to name, they were getting Northern Quest money. So it's good to see that there's at least some sort of relationship there. And then also, guys, like, they're just dogs. They're just so rent-free. They're rent-free with WSU. That's all they care about. I wish the Pac-12 were still a thing. It feels like WSU doesn't even exist anymore. Well,
imagine how they'll react.
Did they exist last year? Did they exist last year at Lumen? I'm pretty sure they did.
How are they going to
thank you for being rent-free.
How are they going to react when the Huskies come into Pullman? WSU takes down the Huskies in the Apple Cup with this non-legit school with an FCS, all this stuff, South Dakota State, this and that.
And here's maybe a Demola and Jalen Caldwell possibly being on the same.
Yeah, we didn't even talk about the tight end, and whose name is who you just said, and is still blanking on me. But I'm very curious to see what that looks like. 6'7" tight ends are either really bad or really good. Like, there's not a lot of in between with those guys. They either look like they move great or they move really poorly. So I'm excited for that one.
Fired up for the season.
I'm glad we got some dogs that are tuning in. Like, holy hell, UW checking out the show. Happy to have you guys tuning in for some WSU content, a full episode. Let's keep in mind that the last 6 to 8 episodes we have done have been heavily Pac-12, and this University of Washington fan chose to tune in to the one episode that we have gone full WSU for a solid now.
Let's check out the WSU Fall Camp.
Hey, happy to have
one other thing I did want to post was Keith Brown, a little snippet yesterday. And Connor, you can go ahead and do that since we've been clicking it at the same time this show.
Tucker Craft, or not Tucker Large, not Tucker Craft. Sorry. Tucker Large, he might be the most athletic guy I've ever seen in my entire life. So, and I've been to a lot of different places and stuff like that and seen some crazy guys. But Tuck, Chump, and I love the big guys up front. I think all around as a whole, on defense and offense, we have a lot of weapons that came in that are going to be ready to produce on the field for us this year.
And tabling off of what, I asked Jamey about, have you seen anything with the return game? And one of the main reasons for that question is because Tucker Large and Angel Johnson are just unreal in the open field, but they're also quite possibly our best player on defense and our best player on offense. So how do we feel about them in the return game?
Well, I was actually surprised that Devin Ellison's name didn't get brought up as sort of just a playmaker, but I think you got to. I think there's just not, and excuse me, I just don't think there's enough talent on this team to surrender having big play opportunities fall into the hands of someone who is not a top end player. Like the difference a special teams touchdown can make in a game is massive. And you need to have high quality players with the ball in their hands to try and make something like that happen. So I'm for it, and I understand the risk involved. But I think when you sort of look at the numbers of what a special teams touchdown means to a result of a game, like it's worth investing chips in that space.
And I might think Tucker Large might have a better shot at the return, because if there is injury concerns with Angel Johnson, you want him to stay in the backfield as long as possible.
Yeah. One thing I'm going to kind of switch here. We've got a couple Kyle Williams videos. Our folks that are fantasy football aficionados or whatever it may be, guys, I think a lot of Coug fans, strictly because we're going by the heart here too, should draft Kyle Williams in their last spot.
8-round flyer.
He is looking like a sleeper, and what him and Drake May are doing so far in this fall camp, they look better. The connection looks better with Williams and May as opposed to Mr. Party Boy Stephon Diggs and Drake May. And here's Kyle Williams talking about that connection with Drake May.
So we just had the look that we wanted. I guess Drake trusted me enough to put the ball in the air and for me to make something shake. And I feel like that chemistry, that connection is steadily growing and it's getting better. And who knows what it'll look like at the end of training camp. So we'll just wait and see.
And here's one of the amazing catches. You just type in Kyle Williams on Twitter right now. There's about 5 or 6 catches from training camp that are just kind of off the chain.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
he's sounding the part.
Yeah.
He is looking the part. Like, I don't think that's going to be a 16th round, last round flyer. Like, I think that's going to be more of like a 13th, 14th. If you're in a rookie draft, that's going to be even high. Like, the guy is turning heads from like non-WSU people, which is always a great sign. Anytime there's like a WSU guy goes into the NFL and it's just WSU heads talking him up, it's like, okay, like let's wait and see here. But when everyone's in on it, the national scouts and everyone's saying, look at this Kyle Williams kid, you start to lick your chops. And I'm so excited for him because he just seems like he is so well, his development, the way he talks, the way he holds himself, everything, you just looking like that's a pro. That's a pro right there. So I'm super excited for him.
And sorry for our favorite viewer who has a turtleneck. We are
Turtleneck and chain.
We are now switching into we have to talk about it with Connor over the last 2 minutes. The Seattle Mariners have suddenly, out of nowhere,
they destroyed this headline.
My goodness, you
We
bring
are
in
a real baseball team.
Josh
We are
Naylor,
a real baseball team.
Eugenio Suarez, and then Caleb Williamson from Pittsburgh?
Ferguson, I believe. Ferguson.
Yeah,
Caleb
Caleb Ferguson, lefty out of the bullpen. And they're not done yet.
Dodgers for the previous 2 or 3 years and was a work hand in that bullpen. And really, Connor, they didn't even touch or make a dent in their main prospect pool.
Yeah, they hardly touched their farm system. Like I was saying to Dylan off air, it's like there had to have been better offers for these guys out there. Or does that just say how deep the Mariners farm system actually is? If they're pulling from not really the top 10, like Tyler Locklear was technically their number 9 prospect, sent in the Geno trade yesterday. But like he had a cup of coffee last year in Seattle. He's had issues, like it's power, not high average. It's like kind of a Geno comp, but he's got to live up to it. It's like we have no room for that on the roster. We're getting Geno and Josh Naylor, who are solid guys. This lineup just got that much deeper, and they have a ton of firepower if they want to keep adding.
As far as Geno goes,
has a potential also.
Yeah, I doubt that will happen. But as far as
I doubt that'll
goes,
happen also.
I don't think there was a better offer on the table. I think what it came down to was Jerry waiting until the Arizona Diamondbacks balked. And perhaps they did. Maybe there was a team at the 11th hour that was willing to offer more. But Jerry stayed in the mix and until the very end and waited till they were willing to come down on their price, which I feel like everyone was like, it's got to happen at some point. They're not going to hold on to him. They're going to get something for him.
I think once you saw the Yankees like kind of throw in the towel and get Ryan McMahon, you're like,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
this seems like it should be a great opportunity for the Mariners. And then down here locally in San Diego, Padres Twitter is going up in flames as Preller has
Wild
done
trade.
it again. I mean, the list of guys that he's traded over his tenure, they bring in Mason Miller and Jack Sears. I mean, you trade Leo DeVries, the third best overall prospect in baseball, for a reliever. I don't know if I agree with that, but we'll leave it at that. A fantastic show this week. Again, shout out to Jamey Vinnick for jumping on with us. Mariners Thursday night tonight. That's viewership TV for everybody. A lot of Cougs going to be excited for watching this game. Big 4-game set against the Rangers.
And we should be mentioned. Shout out to the Cougs viewers who have been waiting for a hard Coug episode. We have not forgotten about you guys. As you all know, there have been lots of news within the Pac-12. So do not think that we are just some Pac-12 show. We are, but we can do both. We can have our cake and eat it too. And we will continue to do so. So if you are a Coug, just know we are still here for you guys. And if you are not a Coug and you are a Pac-12 fan, we are still here for you too. There will be plenty of Pac-12 discussion later on. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
And if you are a Coug, please let us know your thoughts in the comments below on this quarterback battle. I'm curious to hear your perspective on if you're worried about this quarterback race, if you think it's Zevi, if you think it's someone else, let us know. And we'll be right here again on YouTube live next Thursday at 9 a.m. Pacific time. So we'll see you then. Go Cougs.
Go Cougs.
Option. Pitch. Didn't get it. They stuffed him. Formation in the Apple Cup takes a knee.